their financial section of the FAFSA, okay? And we have to remember, FAFSA goes back 2 years. So we will go back to the 2022 tax information. And this happened a few years ago, where the Department of Education seemed to think that because from year to year your tax information doesn't really change all that much. So they felt confident enough that they can go back 2 years to pull in that information, because at that point we know just about everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but just about everybody has completed their tax returns 2 years ago. So it's an easy process. Okay? So the student will go in, put in all their information as well as their financial information. So if they filed a tax return in 2022, they will have to give the Department of Education permission to go out to the IRS and pull in all of that information. So a lot of that financial information will already be updated just by giving the Department of Education permission. Okay? So the student will go ahead and do that. Once they've completed their section, they will have a portion of it where they will go in and they will go ahead and invite the parent or the contributor. Okay? And the reason why I say that both parents should request the FSA ID is because if both parents filed separately, both tax returns have to be imported into the FAFSA. Okay? If you filed jointly, only one parent needs to have that FAFSA or the ID. But if you have filed separately, both information will have to go in. And what the nice thing about it is that there's I would say a parent tutorial, I guess, where they will ask a certain number of questions to the parent, or to the student rather. And this will determine if both parents have to log in and get invited, or if one parent has to. Okay? Once the student has invited the parent or the contributor, you will receive an email which will invite you with links to go into the FAFSA using your ID to get in, to identify yourself, and then be able to go ahead and give the Department of Ed permission to withdraw all the information from the tax return into the FAFSA. Okay, make sense? Okay, pretty simple. And again, we've gone from literally many questions for those who have already done it in the past to simple questions. And the majority of it is coming from the IRS, meaning that it's automatically going to be transferred over. So a lot of that second guessing will go away. Okay? This year, which has changed, in the past, students were only able to add 10 different schools on the FAFSA. This year, they can add up to 20 schools. So for those ambitious students that you have, who are looking to apply for everything, they can add up to 20 different schools on this application. Okay? I would suggest to put their #1 school in first, and primarily a Pennsylvania school if you are a Pennsylvania resident. And I'll talk about that in a second. Okay? So your #1 school and a Pennsylvania school should be as the #1 school listed on that application. Once both the parents and the student have signed it, submitted it, it goes back to the Department of Education, and they'll go through their process. They'll go through their checks and balances. They go through DHS. They go through Social Security. They go through all these aspects of the department and the government to make sure that everything is accurate. The student will receive a student aid report. Now this is basically regurgitating all of the information that's on the FAFSA application. student is reviewing it, making sure that there's no numbers that were transposed, no information that was incorrect. If they have corrections, the Department of Ed will give you instructions on how to make the corrections. How to go back in, make the corrections, resubmit. If nothing has to be done, what I would suggest is creating a folder and putting that student aid report in the folder so you know where it is, in case you have to go back in and make a change. One of the changes that could be made is that both parents should have provided the tax information and only one did. So it's not have the full amount, and we'll know. Okay? Or the student put in some wrong information as they were data entering everything, and it inflated the information that we're seeing. Okay? So review it. If your student puts in their email address, it'll go directly to that student's email. And please make sure they're not using the high school's email address. Because then Mrs. Perez will say that once they've graduated, there's only a certain window where that email will be available. And if we're sending out information based on that email, they'll never see the information. Okay, so use a common email address that they use every day. Nothing cute, like Sweet Booty or anything like that. Okay? Regular email address. Okay. So, the FAFSA has been submitted, student aid report has been sent to the student, they reviewed it, no information. We go ahead and put it into that file folder. You're going to use that FSA ID, put it in the same file folder so you know exactly where it is. Because we have to do this application every year. It's not a once and done, it's a once and done for the year, but we'll have to do it for our sophomore year, junior year, senior year. Okay? Now, that student aid report will then go to all the schools that are listed on the application. To one or to all 20, depending on how many they decide to put on there. And I always tell our students, even if there is a school that you're not sure you're going to get accepted to, that reach school, put it on the FAFSA. Okay, because if the student never applies, never gets accepted, nothing happens. That information just sits there. Okay? So have them check out all the schools that they're really interested in. I always tell students, go to the University of Hawaii. Who wouldn't want to go to Hawaii? 4 years of sunshine, right? Okay? So now the schools will receive it. The first thing the schools will do is that we create what is called a budget or a cost of attendance. Now this will include tuition fees, if they're going to be living on campus, food and housing, books, supplies, transportation, and some other fees that may go along with the academic year, okay? So we create a budget. So based on this academic year, we're telling you this is how much it's going to cost to go to school here. Okay. Tuition and fees, food and housing are what we call direct costs. So costs that you will pay directly to the school or university. Books, transportation, and supplies are what we call indirect costs. So those are costs that you don't pay directly to the school, but the student may have those particular costs throughout the academic year. Obviously, books. You don't have to buy books at the school. You can buy books online, Amazon, wherever you find them, but you don't have to pay for books at the school. So it's not a cost that we're going to tell you you have to pay. Okay, but we want to make sure it's budgeted because you can use financial aid to help cover those costs. If that makes sense. we've created this budget, or this cost of attendance. From the FAFSA information, we get what is the Student Aid Index, which kind of gives us a guide of how much financial aid the student will qualify for, and what they're going to qualify for. They can qualify for grants and scholarships, loans, and work study. Those are the three categories. Okay. Grants and scholarships are basically the free money. Everybody's looking for the free money. Money that can help pay for education costs, but do not have to be paid back. An example, the Pell Grant, Merit Scholarship, any institutional scholarships, the PA State Grant, if you're a Pennsylvania resident. Okay, those are all free funds. As we're going through this information, we will send out what is called the award notification, or the award letter, however way you want to put it. And that will have all these components in there. We will put together what is called that cost of attendance, what it's going to cost the student for that academic year, and then all the aid sources that the student is eligible for. So as I mentioned, grants and scholarships will be on that letter. Loans, which are funds that come from the Department of Education. These are guaranteed loans, so they're not based on any credit. But these are funds that the student will have to pay back 6 months after they stop attending. Okay? So we always tell students, if you have to use them, borrow only what you need. Because again, you have to pay these back. And then the other component that's in this letter would be work study. Now these are funds that come from the Department of Education. These are funds that do not get credited to any tuition or fees or any cost to the university. These are funds that the student can earn by getting a part-time job on campus. And they can earn up to that dollar amount that they're eligible for. So it's one of those funds that it's either you use it or you lose it. We don't renegotiate it or anything like that. Here's the dollar amount. If you want the job, here's a list of positions. Go ahead and apply. Once you get the position, then you'll work out whatever the hours are for that particular department, and then the student can earn up to that dollar amount throughout the course of the academic year. Okay? Depends on the school, will determine on what that dollar amount is. For our university, we offer students about $3,000 a year to earn. It's not a lot of money, but it's money that is it's money for their pocket, to help pay for any educational costs. Pizza if they're out, and having work studies or anything like that. Okay, but it also shows them some responsibility, some real world stuff that's going on, other than stocking shelves and things like that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So now, as I mentioned, the FAFSA doesn't come out until December. We're anticipating that the FAFSA will go out probably, I say end of December. But award notifications may be going out, I'd say mid to end of January, where they'll start. Every school is going to be a little bit different. So if the student applies to 20 different schools, and they get accepted to all 20 schools, then the student will receive 20 award notifications. Okay? So, now the award notifications come out, and what's going to be nice is that they shouldn't all be coming out right around the same time. I'm going to say between January and March is when all those award notifications come out. Because the FAFSA is going to be so late, I think schools are going to try to get this information out as quickly as possible. Okay, which is good to the student. Because then they'll see all that information. So now, what you want to do is you want to look and start comparing and contrasting. Okay? And the one thing I'm going to tell you to do on this award notification, and you're going to find it funny when I say this, is don't look at the award or the numbers. Look at the bottom line. Look at what the cost is, what the aid is, what is it going to cost out of pocket for that family for that one academic year of school. For the most part, we should be pretty close. Okay? Because I don't want you to compare a community college with a private school. It's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges. Right? But if you look at the bottom line, community college is less expensive, right? Which means that they'll probably give them less aid. Private school is a little bit more expensive. They'll get more aid. But we're looking at the bottom line. And they should be reasonably close. At that point, what you want to do now is, as you're kind of weeding out those schools that, I just kind of threw it on there just to throw it on there. Students now comparing and coming down to maybe 3 schools, what's going to be the best fit for them? What's going to be the best fit to earn the degree they're looking for? Right? Because if you're going to compare to like 2 different schools that may be going into nursing, what's going to be the better school for them? Doesn't necessarily mean what is the better school as far as the program. It's what is the best school for them. And that's a hard decision to make. Okay, so parents, be kind to your students, because sometimes it's not an easy decision. I had one student who was comparing about 3 different schools and really was having a hard time determining which school that she wanted to go to. So what we suggested to her was to create a spreadsheet. Pros and cons. What do you like about that school? What don't you like about that school? And same thing for all the other schools that she's going back and forth with. What was important to her? One thing that she felt important was that there was green grass. One of the schools she was looking at was more in the city, and it didn't have all the nature that she was looking for. The grass, the trees. And that was important to her. So have that conversation with them. Okay? So hopefully, the students will have figured out prior to May 1st. Because May 1st is kind of, not the deadline, but that's the national, I've decided what school I want to go to day. Okay? All the schools are kind of pressuring the students, say, hey, May 1st is coming, go ahead, deposit. Right? I'm going to tell you a secret. Don't tell the admissions folks this. May 1st is not the ultimate deadline. Okay? Don't pressure your students if they can't make a decision. Because this is anxious, right? You don't want them to make a decision and then have buyer's remorse. Because I know some students do. They'll have to the point where they've decided, but in their gut, they didn't really feel comfortable with this decision. Okay? So have that conversation. If you're looking at 2 different schools, maybe go back and visit the school again. Sign up or do an appointment. Go to the admissions office and have them either do another tour, sit in on a class. If they offer, they do have where you can have the students stay for the weekend and get an idea of what the atmosphere is. Can't hurt, right? Especially if they're going away. Or, better yet, I tell them, and I know admissions gets upset at me when I say this, do a surprise visit. Just walk onto campus, and then walk into the admissions office and see how they react. Because you know when you go to an open house, we put the dog and pony show on, right? Everything is shiny and new and looks pretty and all that stuff. but go in on a day that they don't have anything scheduled? Is it the same atmosphere? Do they project the same way? Because if they do, that's got to be a good feeling to the student. Does that make sense? So now May 1st has come, students has made their decision, put down their deposit, whatever that deposit is, and they'll have to put a deposit for their acceptance to the university or college, and if they're going to live on campus, there'll be another deposit for housing. So there'll be 2 deposits. So depending on the school, it depends on how much that's going to be. Okay? Students excited, you're excited, everything's moving along. June comes, end of May, beginning of June, when graduations start happening, everybody's excited. Right? Graduation parties. 4th of July comes, and then boom, my phone starts ringing off the hook. Because semester bills have gone out after July 4th. And parents are now panicking because this just got real. We've talked all year, here's what the cost is going to be, here's your financial aid, here's what the bottom line is going to be. You have that plan, yep, we're all set, everything is great, we figured it out. But now reality kicked in, and they're panicking. They've forgotten everything that we've talked about. So after I talk them off the ledge, we go back to our conversations and say, okay, remember, we talked about this. This was your plan, right? Is it still the plan? Yes or no? And don't just have one plan, have a plan B or a plan C. Because if plan A doesn't work, what's the next step? Right? Okay? So, as you see the semester bill, you see that out of pocket. First thing the school is always going to tell you to do is here's your balance, here's what you owe, pay. Here's the due date. Okay? In some cases, people are fine. They may have a 529 plan that they can use to help pay for that. They may have some money that they put away for savings. Grandma and grandpa may say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and pay for that. Wouldn't that be great? Okay? If for some reason you can't do that, schools offer a payment plan. So you can take that balance and you can divide it into monthly installments, depending on the school. Usually it's about 4 or 5, depending on when it starts and what the school offers. Okay? There's usually a processing fee for that, and that can go from $30 to $85, depending on the school. And then you're just doing monthly installments. Done. Okay? But when you see that and you still can't do the monthly payment, you have other options. First option is parents can apply for what is called a Parent Plus loan. This is a loan that comes from the Department of Education that parents can apply for their dependent student to pay for any remaining balances that they may have. This loan is based on credit as opposed to the Stafford loan. Stafford loans are guaranteed loans. As long as the student's never had one before and never defaulted on it, they will automatically be eligible for that loan. Parent, you have to apply, and you have to be pre-approved by the Department of Ed. You go into the same website you did the FAFSA, create the application based on the school the student is attending. You put in the dollar amount that you're wishing to request, and that could be a certain dollar amount. Or you can just check off the box and say, I want the maximum amount I'm allowed to help cover that cost. We will go in, see the information, and go ahead and process it. Okay? Yes?
Is that per semester you can apply or just one time? Or have you?
Yeah. So the question was, for the loan, is it per semester or per year? We would prefer you to do it for the whole year, but you can do it per semester. And the reason why I say you do it for the full year, because you don't have to do it again in the spring semester. You do it for the full year. So if that balance that you see for the fall, primarily you're going to see the same balance for the spring. Because it'll be the same charges, same financial aid. Okay? You've completed the application, submits it, you will automatically get an approval or a denial. Instantaneously. That's pretty good, especially for the government. You hit the button, it automatically gives you a yay or a nay. If you've been approved, you go in and complete that master promissory note or any other paperwork that the department tells you to do, and we're done. We receive the information. As I said, we will certify it based on your request, and then we send it back up to the department to notify them that yes, we've approved this loan. If for some reason you are denied, for whatever that reason is, you have two options. First option is to go back to the Department of Ed and say, hey, why was I denied? They'll give you a copy of your credit reports, determine what caused that denial. You may be able to fix it, and then go back in and reapply. Or you can just basically say, I'm done. I don't want to move any further. With that denial, we can offer the student an additional $4,000 in the Stafford loan to help bring down that balance. So it would be an extra loan for the student, but we would be able to offer them something. Okay. Parents, if you see this PLUS loan and you say, you know what, this is not my education, my students' education, I want them to have skin in the game. I want them to be responsible for their education. Students can apply for what is called a private loan or alternative loan. Now, these are loans that come from private lenders. Sallie Mae is one, PNC Bank, Discover, Citizens. There's a whole host of lenders that are out there. Okay? These are also based on credit. And we know that the majority of our students who are applying for these loans either don't have enough established or any at all. So they will need to have a cosigner. You can be a cosigner, or if you call the counseling office, they'll be more than happy to be cosigners for your students. Trust me. Okay? Or you can do a combination of both, or all three. You have the balance, can't pay for it, too much as far as monthly installments. Maybe you do a small portion of a Parent Plus loan and do the payment amount for the remaining of the balance. Or have the student do a small private loan as you co-sign, and then maybe pay it off in installments for the rest of the balance. You're not tied into one option. Explore all your options. Have a plan. What's going to be best for the family? Because if they have siblings, right, we're going to have to do this again. Not only for the student for 3 more years, but anybody else that comes up behind them. So keep in mind what's going to be best for the family. Does that make sense? If for some reason you see the award notification, you see what that out-of-pocket is, you'll see organizations, you'll see some articles, things like that to try to negotiate with the schools. I can tell you this, the majority of the schools offer their best foot forward. Based on the information on the FAFSA, based on their grades as far as merit scholarships, if they're eligible for merit scholarships, they give we will award the best that we could. Because we don't want to go bankrupt, right? Okay? You're more than welcome to give us a call. We can have that conversation. Or, because remember, we're going back 2 years now as far as tax information. If things have changed in the 2 years, you were employed, now you're not employed, let's have that conversation. Let's see what we can do. Okay? We may be able to do what is called a reduced income process, which will review what your 2022 information was and what it is currently. We may be able to go back into the FAFSA and make a change based on that information. That make sense? Okay? Have a conversation. Because what bothers me the most is I have parents who call me when the school starts. The semester's already started, the student's already in, moved in, everything is fine. And then they call me and say, well, how am I paying this balance? And I go back to, okay, we had this conversation. What was your plan? What was that process? Okay? Parents have students part of this process, because remember, it's their financial aid, not yours. Okay? Under federal regulations, I can't talk to you unless the student gives me permission. Okay? They can give me permission. We can have that conversation, but have them part of the process. Have them part of completing that FAFSA with you. Make sure they understand what's going on. Because I can tell you this, at least once every semester, I have a student who comes into my office in tears. And I'll sit them down and say, what's the matter? What's going on? What do you need? Well, I don't know. My mom told me to come and talk to you. Okay. About what? I don't know. She told me to come and talk to you. Now I'm trying to do a 3-way conversation. Mom on the phone, student in front of me crying, trying to figure this all out. Okay? It's a little tough. I had one actually yesterday. I had both students, because their brother and sister going to the school. And mom was on the phone. And we're trying to have this conversation, a 3-way conversation. Okay? Have them part of the process. Make sure they understand. Because not only will it just make them easier as they cruise through school, it'll make them better people in the outside world. Because they're being proactive. They're understanding the process. And if they don't, they can come in and ask questions. We always have students coming in. If you're not sure, come and ask me. Stop in. More than happy to have those conversations. For the most part, they get it. There are times I have to explain it 3 or 4 different times, using different jargons, different words, but they get it. Have them part of the process. Okay? The other piece of advice I want to tell you is that first day of school, when you go and drop off your students on that first day, whether it's just before orientation or what have you, you're moving them in, you're all excited, you're a little teary, sad, you're going, right? As soon as you get back in the car, before you go home, I want you to go to Home Depot or Lowe's. I want you to go buy new locks, change the locks on the house. Because I guarantee you, they will come back, and they will bring more people with them. Okay? When my kids grew up, got out of college, we were in a 6-bedroom house. We moved and downsized to a 3-bedroom house. I think this is great. My oldest daughter came back, she brought her boyfriend. My youngest daughter came back. So now I have 3 bedrooms, 5 people, plus my oldest had a little boy. So now I had 6 people in the 3-bedroom house. Not a lot of fun. Okay? So change them, and make sure they're good locks too. Not the cheap kind. Get good ones. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? Does it make sense? Yes.
Outside scholarships.
Yes.
How do they apply? When do we have to
counselor, I'm sure they'll give you a lot of different links that you can go to. The one that I always send students to is a website called fastweb.com. It's a free scholarship search. What the student will do is go in and create a profile. With that, in the profile, they'll ask their likes, dislikes, male, female. They have purple hair, green eyes, and purple toenails. Okay? Their hobbies, religious background, anything that will create that profile. And then from there, they'll get a list of scholarships based on that profile. It's up to the students then to apply for the scholarships on time, because remember, this is a national scholarship search. So if they have a deadline of January 1st, everything must be in by January 1st, or they will automatically be eliminated for the search. Okay? If there's an application, complete the application. If they have to do a letter or a note, have them do that. If it's based on community service, make sure they understand what that information is. Submit the information. If the student gets a scholarship from a company or outside source, if the check is coming directly to the school, let us know. We will put it on their account as estimated, and then when we actually receive the check, we'll credit it to their account.
But so that just comes off that bottom line balance that you have to pay. It doesn't get taken back into.
It shouldn't. It depends on some of the aid sources that are out there. Sometimes it may kind of do a swap, but for the most part, it should be added on as an addition. Okay. Yes.
Maybe a question, but if we have two students, both going to college at the same time.
Yep.
Someone FAFSA, I guess when it looks at your financial aid, it's comparing your income, I guess, with one student. Is there any kind of questions there where that they'll know that you actually have the same income when you have two students going to college?
In the past, yes. Moving forward for this year, 24-25, they are eliminating the in-house and how many students are going to college. So it's not going to play a factor in that. I don't know how it's going to work yet. I don't know if that's going to hurt the student or help the student. Because of the fact that we don't know, because it's a new process, we don't know how that's going to affect the student with multiple students going to college at the same time. Okay? So we're assuming, you know what happens when we do that, we're assuming that the information that student aid index is going to be basically the same for both students. Okay, but I don't know if it's going to give them a little bit of an edge, because now there's two students in college at the same time. Okay, yes?
Can you apply for the outside scholarships prior to senior year?
It depends. So the question was, can you apply for outside scholarships before senior year is over? It depends on the scholarship. Because right now, all the scholarships and all the scholarship searches are looking for 23-24, which we're currently in now. Okay? Probably after January, so yeah, they may be able to, after January 1st, they may have the 24-25 out there, and then they can go ahead and start applying then. Yes?
If you have multiple children, I think I didn't get a question, it's one application.
Yes,
for each
yes.
student.
So the question is, if you have multiple children, it's multiple applications. Because remember, it's the student's application. So if you have two students going to school, both students have to complete an application. But the parent only needs their one FSA ID, because that's their signature for both students. Does that make sense? Okay, yes, sir.
So if I have an ID from a sibling from last year, I can.
Correct, yes. As long as it's working, and as long as you used it within a time, usually it's like 18 months. If you used it within the 18-month period, it should be valid. Okay? Yes?
Is there any difference between interest for Parent Plus versus the private staffing loans that they get?
Of course there is. So the interest rates, if you don't know, for the federal Stafford loans, the interest rate currently for this year is a 5.5 interest rate, okay, fixed rate. For the Parent Plus loan, I believe it's a 7.05.
Are both the
The Parent Plus loan normally goes into repayment right away, but you can check off that you wanna defer it while the student is enrolled in school. But just be mindful that if you defer it, interest accrues on that loan every day. So you still be responsible for the interest. Yes, ma'am?
Can you explain the importance of adding the Pennsylvania school choice?
Thank you for reminding me that. So, I had mentioned earlier, make sure you add a Pennsylvania school as the #1 school. And the reason why I say that is because FIA, which is our state agency, they are the ones that are responsible for the PA state grant. They use the same application as the FAFSA. So what'll happen is, when the FAFSA goes to all the different schools that you have listed, it will now go to FIA in regards to the state grant, okay? If the student puts in a school outside of the state, they don't consider them for a state grant. But if they put in a PA school, they'll at least consider it, as long as that student decides to go to that school. If not, then it'll get adjusted. That makes sense. Thanks for reminding me. Yes?
What is the state grant? Is that something that everybody gets for if they
Nah.
go to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so they have to be a Pennsylvania resident. You have to make sure you complete it by whatever the deadline that the state puts in there. It's usually May 1st,
So
okay?
it's something separate than that? Like this is like.
It's the same application, so you're still completing the FAFSA, but that FAFSA information goes to the state as well,
Oh,
okay? And then what they may come back and say, well, you know what, the Department of Ed didn't ask this question, we need to get a little bit more clarification on some other information, okay? But they basically use the same application, so it's not a separate application, but it's a separate fund that we can also put on the award notification based on the estimates, okay? What other questions? Yes?
So just to clarify, put your #1 Pennsylvania school first.
Correct.
May not be your first choice, but put your #1 Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then if they do change, you have to notify the state so that they can update it and then determine if they still qualify for the state funds. Yes.
Just to follow up to that additional one question, so Stafford, both the payment and the interest are deferred on the Parent Plus?
Yes, I mean, interest still accrues, you don't have to make the payment on the interest, it'll accrue, but yes, you're deferred until the student stops
On
attending.
both, so it's both.
Yes.
But you can pay the interest on the student loan.
Correct.
During the course of the 4 years to
Yep.
minimize their
Yeah.
payment post-college.
And there's no penalty for paying off those loans at any time. Who else, somebody, yes?
Merit scholarships.
Yes.
So if a student applies early action,
Mhm.
do they still need the FAFSA before they decide how much merit they'll give them?
No,
Okay, so that's totally,
correct.
okay.
Yeah, just remember that because the student has done early action, it doesn't sway us as far as doing the FAFSA application and determine the aid eligibility. Has nothing to do with whether they get accepted now, or they get accepted later, or if they deposited or whatever. The FAFSA is completely separate, and based on that information determines the aid eligibility. Okay? Somebody in the back, yes?
Is there something like a CSS profile, or what is that
Yeah.
compared to FAFSA?
Yep, so the question is for the CSS profile. So there are some schools that will have a separate application to complete, which is called the CSS profile. It comes from College Board, okay? It's mainly the private schools that would be looking for this. And the reason why they're asking for the additional application is the FAFSA will determine federal and state. The CSS profile determines institutional aid. Okay, not merit, but any endowed scholarships, any need-based grants.
That goes in now, right, or soon?
It depends, so we were talking about this earlier, what you wanna do is go to the school's website, and they'll tell you when that application will be due, okay? Just be careful, the FAFSA is free, the CSS profile is a fee. So you will have to pay for that to complete the application, okay? You may wanna check with the schools, they may have a fee waiver of some sort that you can apply for, but that will cost you to complete that application.
So what we profile then until we know if they're accepted to the schools?
No, you should do it.
Oh,
You should do it. Okay, because you gotta remember,
what's the fee, do you think?
the fee is $25. Yeah. And then it goes down from there.
Just one application.
For one application, but it'll be lower if there's multiple applications. So if you go to 2 different private schools and they both require it, you'll have to pay 2 fees, yes.
But one application.
2 applications, 2 fees. Yep,
So first we just buy to each school.
correct. Yes, sir.
Can a student create their account login prior to the December date?
Yes, that's why we're telling parents to do it now. Go ahead and request one for the student and then one for each parent if there's multiple parents in the household. Just in case that multiple parents have to go into the FAFSA to complete it. Okay? If they only the one, great. But if it gets to the point where both of them have to and the one parent only did and not the other, it'll take a week before you get validation that the ID is correct, before you can submit it, so that may delay that application being submitted to the schools. Okay? There's another question over here. Yes, ma'am.
So if you're applying to schools with a CSS profile, you do that first, but you also do the FAFSA too.
Right.
It's not one or the other.
Right, you have to do both, yeah. But like I said, I would check with the school, go to their website, they'll tell you when that CSS profile is due, and if it is due. Yes,
Is there any information about SAGE tuition?
I do. Thanks for asking that question. So SAGE, that's a big topic, okay? So there's the SAGE Rewards Program. Basically, I look at the SAGE Rewards Program as a coupon, right? You've saved up so many points, and then you go into the SAGE website and you determine how many of those points will go to that particular school, right? When we get the notification from SAGE that this student has applied to the school and wants to put in this number of SAGE points towards their tuition. If the school offers more institutional money than the SAGE rewards are not used. That make sense? So if they get a merit scholarship, say of $16,000, and you have SAGE rewards of 10,000 points, the merit scholarship is more. So we do not have to honor the SAGE points. Okay, and remember, those SAGE points, whatever that amount is for all 4 years. So if it's 10,000, we divide that into 4. Okay? The merit scholarship, if they're eligible for $16,000, it'll be $16,000 for each year. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, and I think only private schools are using the SAGE points, and I don't think so. I mean, what you can do is before you go in and use it, because I don't know what else you can use the SAGE points for, but before you deem those SAGE points to a school, wait until the student gets accepted to a private school and see what that merit scholarship is, and then you can determine if you can use the SAGE points for something else. Again, I don't know what else you can be using for besides tuition.
So would you then, I guess, would you wanna wait until the student, I guess, acceptance versus deciding to go to that school? Like you said, you have to designate the points, like you wouldn't do that to like 2 different schools when you're trying to figure it out?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say have them apply to the school first, whatever schools they're applying to. And as you're narrowing it down, then you can issue the SAGE points if you have to. But again, if the merit scholarship is more, we're gonna disregard the SAGE points.
Okay.
Okay? I saw another question up in the top.
I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to, you were kind enough to speak to merit versus need-based aid a little bit, and the scholarships and grants versus loans. We have obviously several students who apply to R1s and Ivy Leagues. If you could speak a little bit to expectation setting at the dinner table regarding who is going to give need-based only versus merit, that might be helpful.
Okay. So, that's kind of a little tough question. So every school, and primarily, merit scholarships come from private schools. Okay? Because private schools, I'm not gonna lie, are a little bit more expensive than say state schools and community colleges. Okay? So in order to entice students to come, based on their grades, class ranking, SAT scores, ACT scores, will determine what the dollar amount for that merit scholarship is. And that could be a gamut of between $10,000 to maybe $30,000, depending on the school. Okay? That is based on academics. Has nothing to do with the FAFSA, has nothing to do with what your income looks like, what your assets look like. That's completely based on merit. So if the student chooses not to fill out that FAFSA, they still receive that merit scholarship. Okay, because it was based on their academic when they got accepted. Need-based grant is based on the information we receive from the FAFSA. So I mentioned earlier that the schools put together what is called a cost of attendance. Okay, what that budget is, what it's going to cost the school. We receive that student aid index. We take the cost minus the student aid index gives us what is called need. That need helps us determine how much of need-based grant that we will offer, minus anything else. So in other words, if the student had a remaining need of $10,000 for the year, they were getting a merit scholarship of $16,000, there's no more remaining need, right? Because the merit is more than that need. Okay? But if there is more need in there, we will take the merit scholarship, any grants that they receive, any loans that they receive, and then determine what that remaining need would be. Okay. And that's why I say, when you look at those award notifications, don't look at the numbers. Because if you're going to an expensive private school, obviously they're going to give you more financial aid than another school would. And when you're trying to compare two private schools, remember what their costs are. That's why I say, look at the bottom line. Because that helps determine what it's going to cost the family out of pocket. Okay? Yes?
Since the FAFSA is per year, how does something like a 529 get factored into the student aid index?
So the 529 will count as what is called an asset. Okay? So that will kind of determine what that aid index is going to be. So the higher it is, the less financial aid that the student will receive. Okay?
Do they assume you're going to use your balance in year one?
Correct. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to use it for year one, but they know that that's an asset. Okay? So the family determines if they're going to use it all in one shot for that academic year or that semester, or decide they want to take that and divide it into 4 installments. Does that make sense? Okay? Because an asset is money that you can use for education costs. Now, stocks, bonds, all that stuff, and things that if you liquidate and it's going to penalize you, don't consider that as an asset.
So 401k not.
401k is not included in this calculation. Okay? Because again, that's for your retirement. Okay? You can take it out, but there'll be a penalty for it. 529 plans are specifically for education costs. So the Department of Ed considers that as an asset because you can only use it for education. You can't take it out for anything else or you'll be penalized, right? But you can use it for education costs. So, depends on how much you have in that 529 is going to determine how you want to handle that. Like I said, you can just blow it off in one semester or 1 year, if that's how much you have in there. Or, you can take a portion of that and maybe divide it into 4 years, and then figure out whatever, if there's a remaining balance, what the other option is. Okay? Because then once you've used it all in that first year, then it's not an asset anymore because there's nothing there. So now that SAI will be even lower. If that makes sense. Yes?
Was there an issue before about project on whether or not it was in students' name or
if it's in the student's name, it would consider their asset. If it's in the parent's name, it would be their asset. Yes?
Besides the 529, what other assets could they become for insurance?
Anything that you can liquidate without penalty.
Real estate?
If you don't have a penalty on it, well, not your permanent home, but if you have a rental property, that would be considered asset. So sell all property. What else? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to ask, this must be the third time. I hear you say that 529 is an asset in the sense of the FAFSA.
Yep.
And I understand we're liquidating without penalty, cottage house and stuff, versus a private,
Yep.
person or primary owner. Did you say equities and stocks and investments are weighed as assets? Return on-
They are assets if you can liquidate them without any penalty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
There are other children with bank accounts, or they
No.
put it in those?
Because they're usually in the student's name or the student and parent's name, so that'll be for their particular student, not for the one that's going to college. Unless they're both students' name is on the account. What
But
else?
if, I'm sorry,
Yes.
but if,
Well, I'm sorry.
yeah, just, so if, like, I was a joint owner on my other daughter's account, would I have to claim that?
No, it's only gonna be strictly the student
The
that.
primary
Yeah, the
account.
primary student.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is schools are sending out, merit scholarships now for those students who did early action?
Yep.
So they know that they were ready or receiving something. Is there a second letter that's gonna come out, say, after the FAFSA is completed in December? So
Yes.
they say, your cost of attendance would be this
Correct.
as of right now, but
Yep.
then January.
Yeah, so what'll happen is the accept letter will just basically say, congratulations, you've been accepted, here's your merit scholarship, here's how much it is. And usually what happens is they'll give you the small amount for each year, and then they give you the big amount for all 4 years, okay? Then in January, February, or March, we will send out the award notification based on the eligibility of all the aid sources that the student qualifies for. So once we receive that FAFSA and they're accepted, we put in the merit scholarship. If they qualify for any federal grants, state grants, loans, work study, and any other institutional money that we offer.
So it'll be like a final offer.
Correct. Yeah, and it'll include the merit in there if they qualify for the merit. These are good questions. Usually I get one and then we're done.
I have another one.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
there any, like, online calculators or anything that can estimate what your,
Yes, that's a good question. So each school has to provide what is called a net price calculator. So basically, right now, if you go to our website, we have a calculator out there, all right? Obviously, it's only based on 23, 24, so it's for this current year. You go in, put in the students' grade information, and then the parents' income and assets and all that information, it'll give you a mock award notification as far as what it would potentially be eligible for right now, okay? It's not gonna be what we're gonna do for next year, obviously, but at least give you an idea. And you can do that with all the different schools that they're looking for, okay? Just remember that it is an estimate, okay? So when we go out in 24, 25, you've done that net price calculator, and now all of a sudden the aid source we send out is completely different. You can't go back and say, see, this is what you told me. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, okay? And we've had parents who did that, all right? It's a mock. It's just to give parents an idea of what it's gonna cost for that one academic year of school. Okay? What else? We can be here all night. I gotta go. All right, so I'm gonna tell you this. I have business cards out here. If you want a card, please come and take one. Just remember, I can give you specific information about Gwynn and Bercy. I cannot give you any information about any other school. You have to call them directly. Okay, I can give you general information, but not specifics on those schools since I don't work there. Okay, you need to contact them. Have conversations, not only with the student, but with the schools. If you haven't already seen, this Saturday, Winter Mercy's doing an open house. If you haven't been there, take a ride. Gorgeous campus. A little biased, but you know. And they're doing another one in November as well, so feel free to go and take a look. You know, again, dog and pony show. We're gonna give you the shiny, right? Go after, in between the open houses. Go after we come back from Christmas break. How do they act? How does the school look? Should look basically the same. And if that's the case, that may be a good check mark to say, yep, that's the school maybe the student may want to go to. If they feel flustered when you come in, you know, be careful. Just be careful. Okay? All right. I think I'm done.
Thank you very much.